This is a video lesson on how to graph a linear function if the rule is not in function form, if it's not already isolated with a y equals and then mx plus b. There are a few cases of what we'll see here. The first is if you have a regular line but it's in a different form. It could be general form, symmetric form, whatever it is. So there's no special trick to graphing those. Your first step is just to make it look the way you want it to put it into function form. So how do you do that? Well, step one, you'll move terms from one side to another to isolate y. And then step two, divide by the coefficient of y. Here's an example. In this example, 2y minus 5x plus 4 equals 0. That's a linear function in general form. If I asked you to graph that, it would be a lot easier to isolate the y, because then you would be able to identify the slope and you'd be able to identify the initial value. And then you can use one of two tricks. You can make a table of values, or you can just start from the initial value and use the rise over the run of the slope. So I would want to, as a first step, move all the terms to the other side that aren't the y, or move the y. What I probably want is to have a positive y value. And because this is positive 2y, I'll keep the y on this side. If I had had a negative, I'd probably move the y to the other side, and then it would become positive. Here, because that's already positive, I would probably move these two terms, but it's up to you. As long as you end up with the y term on its own side, it doesn't really matter which side. So I'd move this 5x, or the negative 5x over, and the 4 over to the other side, and when I do that, this is what I end up getting. This negative 5x becomes positive 5x, and the positive 4 becomes negative 4. And the second step was to divide by the coefficient of y. Here I have 2y, and I just want 1y. So I would divide both sides by 2, and that means every term. I divide 2y by 2, 5x by 2, and negative 4 by 2. If I put this entire right-hand side of the equation over 2, it means that I'm dividing each term by 2. So I end up with y equals 5 over 2x minus 2, and that means that my initial value is negative 2, and my rate of change, or my slope, is 5 over 2. So if I wanted to start graphing at negative 2 as my initial value, and then I would rise 5 and run 2, I'd find my second point, and I would go from there. I'd be able to graph that way. There are a couple of other types of rules that won't be in a y equals form. And they're more like special cases. Actually, one of them is a y equals. But all vertical lines, that means lines that go straight up and down, will be in the form x equals some number. So for instance, x equals 2 is a vertical line that passes through 2. How can you remember which is which? Well, if x is equal to 2, it means that the x value is always 2. So think of a few points that have an x value of 2. 2, 0, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 4. All of those points have an x value of 2. It means that x is 2, and those form a vertical line. That's one type of exception. And horizontal lines, that's a line that will go from left to right, will not increase its height, will be in the form y equals a number. So this is the line y equals negative 1. It passes through the y value of negative 1, and it's a horizontal line. And again, if you aren't sure, take a few points that will have a y value of negative 1. So that's 0, negative 1. That's 2, negative 1, negative 2, negative 1. All the points that have a y value of negative 1 will form a horizontal line. And finally, also a little bit of a special case, if you have a line that looks like this, y equals ax or mx, and it does not have an initial value, it means that your initial value is 0. So for instance, 3y equals x is not even isolated. First, I would divide by 3 and get y equals x over 3. And that means that my initial value is 0. It passes through the origin. It passes through 0, 0. And then my slope, in this case, would be 1 over 3. I didn't write the isolated value or the version. It would be y equals x over 3. My slope would be 1 over 3. I would rise 1 and run 3, and that would be my next point.